Titi, I've started the recording again. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. All right. All right. Um, Welcome once again to the Textile Arts Cohort 4.0. This is the fourth time we're doing this learning session. Security learning part only started last year, and this is the second time that we are going to be having the security learning part. Last year, we focused on looking at security compliance, SC900. For this cohort, we decided to be specific and target the identity security learning pathway, just so that the people who attend this class will be able to begin to appreciate how to streamline their security career into a particular security concept. So today we're looking at identity. We will try as much as possible to see if we can cover all of this today. However, because we've lost 30 minutes of our time, we would see how much we can cover. We'll be looking at identity landscape. We just took a little poll here to see how much of those available online, how much you know about Microsoft Azure Active Directory. When we come to cloud computing, Microsoft Azure Active Directory is the identity management system for Microsoft. So Microsoft Azure Active Directory is the identity management system for Microsoft Cloud Computing. So most of what we'll be looking today would be around using the Microsoft Azure Active Directory to implement our understanding about identity security. So we'll be looking at the identity landscape. We'll be looking at zero trust and identity. We'll be understanding why you use an identity. We'll be looking at identity administration concepts, authentication and authorization, and auditing and identity and supplemental topics. Please feel free to ask questions as the session goes on, or if you don't want to come off mute, you can drop your question in the chat box. Once again, be reminded that this session is being recorded. So if you do not want to be recorded, please feel free to drop off now and you can catch up on the session on the YouTube channel. My name is Joy Medom. Okay, quick rundown of what we'll be looking at when we say identity landscape, at Microsoft. Like I said, because this is a Microsoft targeted session, we would be looking at the Microsoft's own identity management system. However, what we would do is to give you concepts that enable you understand identity security. So even if you went to another cloud provider's platform, there are certain concepts you will learn today that will be the same. So while we are building you as security professionals to work in isolation of any technology, because we're very Microsoft centric here at the community, we'll be using the Microsoft Azure AD to demo and show some of these learnings in the course of this training. The identity landscape at Microsoft looks at one thing: zero trust. We look at zero trust. We look at, so we'll be understanding what zero trust means. And whenever we hear zero trust, there are three key things that come to mind. Verify explicitly. Why do you need to do that? Provide least privilege and assume breach at all times. Yes, in the zero trust methodology, we always assume that whatever we see that triggers is a possible breach or an attempted breach. And so that's how we handle it. Identity, we also look at in the identity landscape, we try to identify what is your identity. So we do things like decentralized providers. So you have your business to business. So whenever you see B2B, it's business to business, your B2C, your business to customers. And we look at things like verifiable credentials. We will be, I think in week 3, we'll do a couple of assignments around verifiable credentials. Also in identity landscape, we also try to look at actions that you need to take. So you need to authenticate and prove. So when you see things like and you need to authenticate and prove that you are the owner of this identity, you need to authorize. That's where you get access. You need to administer, configure, you need to audit, you need visibility into this identity. The usage of this identity is very important in the landscape. We look at how you secure this identity, the type of cryptographic methods that you use to secure this identity, and as you all know, licenses. Most of these are licensed features. And then we create some form of maintenance or visibility by using the protect, detect, and respond approach. And what happens is that by the time you're done with this, it's a continuous cycle. So in the zero trust methodology, we follow this sequence, and it's a continuous life cycle. It's very important in zero trust that you secure assets where they are with zero trust. So when it comes to identity security, or when it comes to security, one of the key concepts that we are preaching is to use the zero trust methodology. Make sure that all your assets are secure, right? The normal approach that we normally used to take before the whole zero trust methodology buzz started was to do the normal classic approach, which is restrict everything to a secure network. So because we had taken an earlier poll where we had asked you about your background around security, I would presume certain terminologies I would use here you understand. So let's take it back in the days before even the pandemic. You would have to come to the office to assess certain things. In fact, previously, years way before the pandemic, certain organizations did not even allow their email infrastructure accessible from anywhere. It meant that you will not be able to see your email after close of work. You will not be able to see any alert or notification of any system downtime after close of work, because this whole services and infrastructure were locked up in a secure network. And that was the ideal way of making sure that things were secure. But as innovation began to happen and the need to begin to provide remote access and remote work, we began to see that our landscape of identity is spreading beyond just a particular zone. So if I came to the office to work, it did not necessarily mean that the services I was consuming was in that location or building I was in. You agree with me, right? So this led to us beginning to look for what's the best way to ensure that we can now protect this environment, considering that our data identity are no more limited to a particular location. And that's what brought about the zero trust methodology, which provides a central policy system that allows you to protect all your identity that have been spread across different environments. So today, your users have emails on their mobile phone. How do you ensure that your corporate email is protected? Today, people are accessing applications from anywhere on even their family devices. People are doing shared devices. How do you ensure that you protect this thing? People travel, people are supposed to be based in location A, but for some reason need to travel, and in the course, they need to still carry work along with them. How do you ensure that when they move from location 1 to location 2, that the company's identity or data is protected within that movement? And that's what brought about the zero trust methodology. In the zero trust methodology, one key principle that we apply is to verify explicitly. We always validate all available data. We always make sure, where is this user identity? Where is this location? We don't assume. Take, for instance, Joy. I'm a system admin and I'm based in the head office, and the head office is based in Abuja. And for some weird reason, Joy's account is seen logging in from China and logging into the organization at what's the difference of time zone between Nigeria and China? The zero trust principle enforces that in those kind of situations, we should not assume that it is Joy. Because the name carries Joy's login does not necessarily mean that it has to be Joy, because right now, what we are seeing is that this identity is logging in from a different location. So in the zero trust methodology, especially around identity, you must begin to ask yourself, how do I merge these principles and these policies to ensure that I provide the right security? We must always verify. We cannot necessarily assume because username and password have been verified, that automatically means that this is Joy, who is the system admin and who has global admin rights on the Active Directory, should come in, because you all know that as a global administrator, if my account is compromised, I can bring down the whole organization. So we create policies that verify explicitly that this user is who they are. While we are verifying explicitly around user identity and location, we also look at things like device health. Oh, this is Joy. She's logging in from Abuja. But what we can see is that she's using a device that is with a vulnerability. What do we need to do? Do we need to make excuses and say, oh, because it's Joy, she's the system admin, let's allow her login? What does that mean to us as an organization? If we find somebody using device that is vulnerable, what does that mean to us in the threat landscape? So in zero trust methodology, we check things like device health, device health. We do not assume that because we have validated your identity, then the device by which you are using to access the infrastructure, if it is not meeting compliance, should be allowed. Service or workload context. What are you trying to access? Are you the one allowed to access it? Are you supposed to access it? What you're trying to access, is it what you're supposed to access at that time? We also look at data classification. Why is Joy trying to export list of users at XYZ, and we're seeing her export it, and she's exporting it outward? She's not just exporting it from the tenant, she's exporting it and probably uploading it to an FTP server. Why is she doing that? So there are certain data that we must ask. Why do people want to move this data out of the organization? If these data have been classified as confidential and internal, why are we seeing confidential and internal data being sent out? Why are we seeing database files being exported out of the database server and being uploaded into FTP servers? Why? And then in general, anything that just triggers an anomaly, So in the verify explicitly principle, we do not work with assumption. We make sure we check everything. Everything that triggers, we ask why. Why? Why are you logging in by 12 midnight? Why are we seeing this account login and has tried the password 4 or 5 times? Why is this device logging in from China when we know we don't have any of our staff who is a global admin in China? Why is this device logging in with devices that are showing vulnerability XYZ? Why are we seeing a high increase of data export off to FTP servers? There must always be that reason to verify. Always verify. That's the zero trust methodology. Remember, you can ask me any questions by dropping in the chat or by raising your hand as we progress. Another principle is use least privilege access. In the zero trust methodology, we require that you use least privilege access. And why? I'll explain. If you give me an access that I need for XYZ tax, and I would not need that access anymore in the next 30 to 40 days, and I only need it for specific tasks, but you have elevated my credential and allowed me to do that. If my account is compromised and the time it takes for the system to identify my account has been compromised, because my account has certain level of privileges that I don't use all the time, that account can begin to do certain things. And so before the environment will probably detect to react and respond, certain level of impact would have been made. So in order to reduce the impact that happens, peradventure an account is compromised, we only give account what they need when they need it. So that's what brought about the just in time. Oh, I'm a system admin, but my day-to-day work will doesn't necessarily require me exporting list of users and their access rights and their group membership all the time. However, I find out that every month audit requires me to submit XYZ. We can now set the system that, oh, every month I will request for a just-in-time access to allow me go in and export this, do what I need to do, and when I'm done, I push it out. We can say that, oh, our company business has nothing to do in certain regions and location. There's no reason why we would have staff at this region and location. However, we have a staff who holds a particular role and the staff is on vacation. But then there's an important incident that happened and we need this staff. And this staff has gone to Tokyo, gone to a particular region that is not in our wide zone region. And this staff needs to connect for us to be able to do what we want to do. At that point, we can give a just-in-time access to this user to be able to connect and do what they need to do. And when they are done, we retrieve back the access. We do not leave blanket access and assume that, oh, you can't predict where people are. Are you saying that you want to know where people go on their vacation? No. If we say that in order for us to maintain security on our identity, we do not want people to log in into our tenants from XYZ region, and we use that as our verifying explicitly policy to restrict access to our tenants to only XYZ regions. Peradventure, we have somebody that has gone to another region and needs to connect. We can provide a just-in-time access for that person to connect at that time, implement what they need to do, and then we retrieve back the access. The same thing behind the just-in-time access is what we have with just enough access. The just enough is also explained that you only get what you need. I need to spool reports. You don't need to give me global admin rights because I need to spool reports. If the only role that I do is to spool reports and I never have to delete accounts, I never have to create accounts, I never have to modify accounts, why then are you giving me global admin rights? So it's very important that when people, even when you have departments, say, oh, everybody in HR, we want everybody in HR to have the same access. No, you should question. In the identity and asset management system, we look at use least privilege access, engage the team, find out what do people do. The people who are responsible for onboarding users, are they the same people who are responsible for exiting users? The people who onboard users, are they the same people responsible for sharing benefit documents and policies with users? If they are not, then why do you have to give everybody the same access? Certain people will have just enough access for them to do what they need to do. And certain people can request for just-in-time access if they need this on a periodic basis. And certain people can have certain privilege. Once you're able to do this, you are reducing the possibility of a threat spreading in the event of any compromise. We also have things like risk-based adaptive policies, whereby we look at what is the potential risk. I gave an example where, okay, we would have people logging here from XYZ, or probably you have offshore staff. Okay, we weigh the risk. If we give offshore staff XYZ, do we put a supporting policy that says, if the person is in this group and is here, then allow? What we are saying in the zero trust principle is never give blanket policies. Never assume that everybody needs the same access. And then one of the third principle is always assume breach. What do we mean by always assume breach? Don't assume that, oh, our network, everything is safe. Always assume and say, in the net users' devices, users' app, why do they want to connect? Why do they want to connect? What do they want to connect to? Why should a database server, why should a database server be in the DMZ? Why should a database server not be in the internal network? Why do you want firewall permission from DMZ to internal network? What do you want to assume? Always assume that that network segment or that access can cause a breach. And that's what leads us into segmenting access today. That's why we don't have one blanket access. That's why we don't put databases on DMZs, because we always want to assume that the databases will be compromised. So we segment our network and look for the most protected network and put things like database. And then for public facing web access, we put things like the public servers there on the DMZ. So it's very important that we assume that, oh, there can be a potential breach, right? And then in the course of ensuring that we can build bridge against this bridge, we do things like encryption. We say, oh, let's not assume that, oh, everybody coming in is coming in legitimately. And so there's no need to encrypt. So we encrypt our traffic. And then we do things like analytics, where we say, okay, this behavior we are seeing, why are we seeing this like this? What's happening? Should these people behave like, should we see more login users from XYZ location when our business doesn't have anything in those locations? So the zero trust principle, we have three key principles that guide us in the zero trust methodology. There are a whole lot, is more than this, but these three guide us when it comes to identity management. We verify explicitly, we check user identity, location, device health. We make sure that you have only the privilege that you require, and then we assume breach. Do we have any questions so far? So when you are deploying a zero trust solution, right, whatever that solution is, remember identity, endpoint, data, apps, infrastructure, and network. These are the 6 components that share, I like to use the word, that share like a handshake, right? Your identity is what represents the people, the services, the device. So when an identity is trying to access a resource, you have to verify that that identity has strong authentication that will either ensure that it is compliant and can now allow for that access. So in any environment, the first entry point is an identity. If you wanted to log into your company internet banking today as a customer, you won't just say, oh, I have an account with this bank. They should know. What do they do? You'll be profiled on the internet banking or the mobile banking app, and you'll be given an identity. And that identity will be validated by asking you for a password, and in some instance, a second factor authentication, just to be sure that you are the one. Right? In some environments, you will see when they are setting up mobile banking, you will see that when you're setting it up for the first time, it will even ask you to authorize the device so that it can merge the identity of the device to your identity. Just peradventure, if your account is compromised and somebody takes another mobile device and is trying to authenticate into your mobile app, what happens? It will not authorize. You see that this is a new device and it will not authorize it because you haven't authorized that device. So at Microsoft, this is how we manage the zero trust landscape. You can see here, we have the Azure AD, where we create conditional access policies. You can see here, sorry, where we have the Azure AD, which is the start of the identity. And then an identity, a user requests access to a resource. The resource will direct the user for authentication to the Azure AD conditional access policy. So what do we use to now enforce this verify explicitly, use least privilege, assume breach is on the Azure AD. However, once the user wants to authorize, how do we enforce this policy? We create conditional access policies on the Azure AD that helps us to enforce these policies. Once the user hits the Azure AD, depending on the policy that has been assigned to that user, that will determine the access that will be given to the user. The same with the device. In the instance where the endpoint is an identity, the endpoint will need to access apps and device. The endpoint will hit the Azure AD, get conditional access policy that apply, and based on what those policies are, the user will be determined whether they will be able to gain access into the environment. Now, whatever that policy is, controls and access will be applied, and then that user can now go and access data, apps, infrastructure, or network. So when we'll be doing our hands-on, we'll be looking at how to create conditional access policy that enable us to enforce or verify explicitly, check for least privilege, and assume breach. Do we have any questions so far? I'd like to take 5 minutes, grab water, grab coffee, and in 5 minutes we'll come back and we'll be looking at the architecture framework.
Hello. Can anybody hear me? Hello.
All right, so I'm back.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Sorry, I asked us to take 5 minutes, grab water.
Okay, I didn't get. Okay, I didn't hear that. Thank you.
That's fine. So, in the last 20 minutes, we've looked at how Microsoft enforces the zero trust methodology. 3 key principles in the zero trust methodology that we apply. Please, if you can remember anyone, feel free to drop it in the chat, just so that I'll be sure that you're following us. I know a couple of us had audio issues. So if you can remember anyone, drop it in the chat on one of the principles, the 3 key principles that we mentioned. Mention anyone you can remember. Now we're looking at the architecture frameworks. Identity is an important pillar in the Azure architecture framework. Why? Because that's the entry point into your infrastructure. That's the entry point into your infrastructure. So it's very important that when you're doing your architecture framework, you pay close attention to your identity and asset management. There are lots of materials under the architecture framework for you to go and look through. So why an identity? Why do you need an identity? You need an identity because one, you want to be able to prove that you are who you are, right? So today I can see Madam Franca Ebuzo, and without hearing her voice, I can assume that this is the Madam Franca of the Power BI, stream. If I want to now, verify her further, there are certain questions I'll probably ask just so that I'm sure that this person who is showing as Franca Ebuzo on the app, on the session, is the Madam Franca that I have in mind. So first of all, an identity is something that you want to be able to use to prove, right? And so we mark that authentication. You want to be able to get permission to do something. So for you to be able to attend this class, you were profiled on the Techstylers tenant with your email address so that you can access this tenant, right? And if you notice, when you join, for some of you, based on the privilege that you have, we have to admit you. So what that means is, even if you share this link with other people, right, they would not be able to access the class because they have not been authorized to access the training sessions. And we also want to be able to verify through auditing that these things we have said that we have configured is even how it's happening. If Joy is supposed to be able to assess things and we want to be sure that Joy cannot delete, we want to verify, is it true that Joy cannot delete? So we want to go back and be able to see the kind of things that Joy does and prove that Joy can only access, view, but cannot delete. And then in the instance where innovation, we're now looking at how to do self-service. For us to be able to have a secure self-service platforms within identity. So my internet banking app, my GTB internet banking app was having issues. I have done everything, even though we know all the banking apps are having issues, but I've done everything. And when I chat people, they'll be like, oh, they can log in. For me, I couldn't even log in at all. I went to the app, it was not showing any update. So I said, okay, you know what? Let me uninstall it and reinstall it. For those of you who have done system admin, you know that that's we used to call it the last bus stop. If you have done all the troubleshooting you can do and something does not work, you either restart the server or you uninstall and reinstall. We call it last bus stop. It's not the most effective way, but since I'm not a GTB staff that wants to be troubleshooting why their app is not working on my phone, that's like the last bus stop for me as a user. So I uninstalled. And as soon as I reinstalled the app, remember, they have a security mechanism. Now I am reinstalling the app on a device and they need to verify if I'm the one who is supposed to log in with these credentials on this device. And so the next thing it does is ask me for my ATM last 6 digits. I provided it and then they asked me for my PIN. I can't remember my PIN. That's a self-service platform that has been made, but I can't remember my PIN. As a user, I might feel frustrated, but I now have to think, what do I do? If I can't remember my PIN, what do I need to do? I need to go into the banking hall. Unfortunately, I'm not in the country to go into the banking hall. So what do? I remember that they have a web portal. So, and I remember that on the web portal, right, I don't need to authorize my device. I have my username, I have my password. So I go into the web portal and I look for self-service again to see if there's any way I can recover my ATM PIN. And I go through the process and I recover my ATM PIN, following the credentials, following my security question, providing my hardware token. So my hardware token, I had to provide my username and password. They were sure it's me. I provided the 6 digits of my ATM. They were sure it's me. Then they asked me for my security question. Guess what? I couldn't remember my security question. So I had to go back to self-service that requires resetting security question. By the time I went there, they asked me for my hardware token. And I had my hardware token. Now, if I didn't have my hardware token, I would have hit a roadblock and I would have been forced to go into the bank to verify that I am the person who is trying to do this. So that is a zero trust methodology that has been applied in that self-service for GTB. Why they want to allow us as customers to have ease of administration, they know that we need identity. So my identity is my username and password. My identity is my token. My identity is my security password, just so that I can be able to ensure that I have a good self-service. So Why we use identity, these 4 A's are very, very important: to authenticate, to authorize, to administer, and for auditing. Auditing is very key. Oh, I can't tell you enough how for about 3 to 4 years, I was in the investigation and fraud investigation team that will always, independent investigation team that will always be set up anytime there's a fraud in the banking industry. And when we start to do our investigation, we go as granular as things like, were you even on leave? You will see cases where people want to do fraud and they strategically plan it to be when they're on leave. And so when we see you, oh, you're on leave, but you still came into the office. So when you are replying the investigation queries and you say, oh no, I was on leave, and we agree, but we see you that yes, you were on leave, but you are logging into the system. The only reason why we can prove that is because of identity. So we go through auditing to say, Joy says she was on leave when this incident happened. But how come we're seeing that Joy logged in doing XYZ, and we need to confirm? And then we go as granular as checking what are the kind of things she assessed. So you can come and say, oh, my email, maybe my email was compromised. You know, people can access email from anywhere. Oh, good. And then we see that you came into the office. We see that your identity was showing on the printer solution, and the printer solution has PIN, and PIN is the only way you can use to take out the job. And we see that a job was printed and taken out. We have used things like this to find people during fraud. It's a very, very interesting thing, how identity is very key. And then at that moment, you begin to hear people say, because they would never have thought that as little as sending a job to the printer and printing it out can be the thing that will enable us to begin to connect the dots. And so that's why identity. So when you see people begin to innovate and say printing solutions should have PIN, you begin to say, isn't that expensive? Back in the days, all we needed to do is put printer. People will send their job to the printer and it will come out. Oh, yes. But how do you know who is printing what? In fact, today we have printing solutions that can tell us the kind of document that you print, the name of the document that you printed. And that's what identity helps you to do. That's one of the benefits of identity in auditing. Any questions so far? So who is an identity provider? Drop it in the chat. Who is an identity provider? Give me an example. Let me not say who is an identity, since we can see the definition. Give me examples of identity provider that you know. No, now. I'm asking a question that the expo is on the screen. I'm asking you a question and the answer is already on the screen. So I'm expecting everybody to be fastest fingers. Miriam, you are not technical, you're just calling the OEM. The identity provider is Siwi. You're also calling the OEM. The identity provider is for Microsoft, it is Azure Active Directory. That is the identity provider. AWS is the OEM. Identify what AWS has. I think theirs is AWS IAM. So your identity provider is the system that creates, manages, and stores the digital identity. So Microsoft is not the system, because Microsoft has Power BI. Microsoft has Power Apps. So if you say Microsoft is an identity provider, you are wrong. But Microsoft has an identity provider called the Microsoft Azure Active Directory. Have we gotten it? These are very, very thin examples. So I know you know it's Azure Active Directory, but I'm just saying, as you progress in your career and you begin to want to speak about these things, it's just very important that you're very clear. So when I see you type Microsoft, Google, AWS, I know that you're referring to their identity providers, but it'll be very good that you're clear next time, because when you say Microsoft does Microsoft Power BI, Microsoft does Microsoft 365, Microsoft does, so be very clear. So the identity provider for Microsoft is the Azure Active Directory. And for those of you who just joined us, we mentioned that in this session, we will be doing our demos, our labs, our assignments on Microsoft Azure Active Directory. However, the concepts we are teaching can be used on any service provider. So for those who joined from when we started, we've been looking at the zero trust methodology. Zero trust methodology is a concept. As an identity security person, it's very important you understand that concept so that anywhere they put you to look into identity security, use that concept. However, we are focusing on how Microsoft implements that principle, right? Okay. So the most common components are, you want to have a location for where all your user identities are. You want to have something that will authenticate them. You want to have security protocols that will enable you prevent intrusion, and you want to trust someone. So this is a very simple. So when you hear identity, you just want to, your identity system wants to make sure that, oh, I have a repository, because for me to be able to, validate these users, I need to have a repository of where all these users are. Then I need to have something that I'm going to use to authenticate these users. And then some form of security that I'm put in place just to make sure that people cannot intrude. And then someone we trust. So if you go back to when we looked at this diagram, and bear in mind about what we say an identity provider should be, you will see that the Microsoft Azure Active Directory is the user repository. Do we agree? And the Azure AD conditional access policy is where we use to validate these people and grant them access. Your identity is the control panel to your different resources. Think of any bridge that you have heard of. Think of any hack that you have heard of. What was the entry point? It was compromise of an identity. I'm sure that's a yes. Unfortunately, most of you, your mics are not working, but I'm sure you're all not nodding your head and saying yes. Miriam, you want to say something? But please feel free.
Kim, I just wanted to,
You wanted to?
I just wanted to concur to what you said. Like,
Exactly.
identities.
So if you think of any compromise, the compromise did not just happen whether it was because of through a phishing email. What the compromise was your identity. If you are the CFO of your company, for you to be able to authorize transaction, it's not just because you have the title CFO. It's because your title is CFO, so they have given you an identity that when you log into the corporate internet banking, you have the ability to authorize transactions based on XYZ level. So when they want to bridge your organization and they target you, they are not targeting you because you are the CFO. They are targeting your identity. So they are targeting, what is that identity that, yes, you are the CFO, Joy is the CFO of XYZ organization, but is it Joy that she's using to log into the platform? If what I'm using to log into the platform is aaa.xss, that is what they are targeting. Because it is that aaa.xss that allows me to be able to execute that role as a CFO. So your identity is the control plane. Is what enables you to secure access to a world that is connected. Take a few minutes to just ponder about how much damage can be done once certain levels of identity that you own today is compromised, or certain level of identity for those of you who are already working in certain roles in security. You might not necessarily be a system and maybe you're even an auditor, but begin to think and say, so that means if they compromise our CFO's account today, what's that impact to us as a business? If they compromise our MD's account today, what does that mean? If they compromise my account, I remember when I was working in the bank for 7 years, I held a very, very sensitive role. I had credentials that if they were compromised, they could bring down the whole infrastructure. Those years of my life were very paranoid. You can't find me allow you use my system. If you came and said, oh, Joy, please, something is wrong with my system. Can I quickly use your system? I'll be looking at you with one eye. Everybody was a suspect for me. You see this assume bridge. That's me. I assume you are my very good friend. Outside the work environment, we have had transactions that I can boast and say, this person is mine. But when it came to my work, because of the role, I would just assume, what if this person for 1% has been compromised, and this person, I will look at you 2 3 times before I will allow you. Oh, yes. In fact, it got to a point that affecting my marriage because everything is, I'm suspecting everything. You have to, but on a light note, what I mean by on a light note, everything is this. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? Why should we do it? I assume bridge. I assume everything is compromised. Because for me, I could not stand the fact that I was going to be the entry point. When I see people say, oh, I can't do this thing, let me give you my password. So I will be looking at that and say, hey, I can't give you my password. I will find a way to get to that place. I will find a way to find a system, and I will do what I need to do. I remember one time my husband and I had to go to the UK embassy, and we forgot to print out certain documents, or we didn't understand the requirements. So we went with the wrong set of documents. And by the time we got there, they had said that, oh, we needed to print XYZ documents. We could access the portal on our phone, but how do we print? Because it wasn't a case of you can export it and send it as email. You had to print it from that portal. So what the embassy did was the embassy had a general system that they put there. Once you have that issue, they tell you to log into that system and then initiate that print since they had a printer. But now the problem was that my husband and I had logged into the portal using our single sign-on. So we had integrated it with our Gmail. So what that meant was that we didn't have isolated username and passwords for that platform. So while it was very cool to do integration with our email account, at that moment, it was not cool for us anymore because it meant that we had to log in with our email account first into that device. And then from there, now, logging into the UK portal and print. Oh, Jesus. My husband, who is not technical, for him, we just need this so we can get on the line and do this thing. He was just like, oh, baby, let's do it. And I was busy thinking, okay, if I do this, my email. My husband just went straight, let's log in this thing. And when we logged in and the document came out, I was busy going to clear cache. I had to sign out. From sign out, I went to cookies. People were on the queue waiting for me. And I went, clear cache, clear cookies, clear browser history. I was just, because I was like, I'm not leaving any trace of my email on this system. But that's what happens. That is how we should operate as security professionals, because we know the implication of when there's a compromise. It's okay for every other person not to behave like this, but for us who are supposed to provide these security controls, we can, because we know that identity is what controls everybody. So let's look at some identity administration concepts. How identity objects are managed, whether manually or automated, over the lifetime of identity existence is the administration. So even before technology, there were manual ways by which identities were being granted. I don't know if people, I don't know the age demographic that we have here, but there were times where there were certain maybe people who did store management. What they would do is that for you to come and access something in the store, you come and sign, right? And then when you sign, they'll either give you a key or something, you go in, do what you want to do, then you come out and sign out and go out. That's an identity management system. It was manual, right? And then that's how they have chosen to manage those identity objects. Administration will help you provide a system which is highly configurable around business processes. You want to also make sure that your administration process helps you save costs, right, during distribution and automation. and then the agility to be able to scale these resources according to how demands come. So when you're doing when you're looking at administration under identity concepts, you want to look at things like, how will I update this identity? How will I manage the passwords? How will I manage the group membership? How will I enforce change controls? How will I synchronize, policies, identity? How will I provision and deprovision? How will I grant access and remove access? What are the ways by which this identity can get compromised? What is the interface by which people will use to connect? So when we're looking at administration in identity, these are the things you want to think about. So if HR is more interested in, when we recruit people, as HR, we want to be the one profiling them, because if we're waiting for IT, we're taking time. So once we recruit people, we want to go into the system, create them on either your SAP or your whatever ERP solution you're using. And once we've created them, it should synchronize with the Azure Active Directory, and the user's account is created with email created. Good. But now a user has come in. As the identity security person, you want to ask yourself, how then do we deprovision? When the person has left the organization, how do we ensure that this person that has left, we don't keep the access anymore? I've done all this for certain organizations, and people that have left organization for over 2-3 months, their access has never been disabled. What that means is that person still has access to company data, and that person can be an entry point. And in some instances, genuinely, that person might not even know anymore, because that person has resigned and moved on. And so that account can now be compromised and used as the entry point. It doesn't necessarily mean that the compromise has to be the person who had the account before. So when you're looking at administration of identity, you must look at ways to, today we call it joiner, movers, leavers. When you hear those kind of terminologies, for those who are doing the power automates, when they are creating as they say, think about the joiner, mover, leavers process, how people come in, how people move across department, and how people leave the organization. Then how do you want to update identities? My name used to be Joy Babuchi, and then I got married. Now my name is Joy Medom. You understand? How do we want to update this identity so that the system still knows that Joy Babuchi is still Joy Medom, right? How do we want to synchronize this identity across different platforms? So that's why you have things today like the B2B and B2C, where you can use your Gmail account to log into applications. You can use your this 5 account to log into applications. Innovation brought about this, but while we are doing this form of administration, remember, we still have security at the back of our mind. How do you want to manage passwords? When people's passwords expire, do they all have to call service desk to change their passwords? Or are there ways they can change their passwords on their own? How do you want to group people into groups, right? So that we can know that, okay, everybody in HR, but HR under benefits, everybody in HR, but HR under learning and development. Because imagine HR team, people in learning and development, what concern them with payroll? But if you as the identity security person does not understand segmentation, when HR comes and says, create a group for us and call it HR at xyz.com, and you put everybody there, then they now have their HR platform and say, give everybody in HR at xyz.com full access. And you just go ahead, you not ask yourself, is everybody in HR supposed to have access, full access? The person who is in L&D, who all they do is organize trainings, why are they seeing payroll tab? The person in payroll, why are you seeing benefits? The person in office supply, why are you seeing payroll? So you must understand how to do group management. So you want your administration of identity to enable you to do group management. Application entitlement, which is also what I'm explaining. How do people log in? What's the interface? And then the kind of change that you can do. Another identity concept is automation and management. Trust me, I don't like this one. Yes, I don't like PowerShell. How many of you are like me? I don't like PowerShell. It makes life easy, but the thing just doesn't want to stay in my head. Why do I feel some people are just giggling? I have tried everything to know how to write commands, but it's like this is my brain. So in identity management, we want to do automation because the truth is you cannot be doing everything. If you have 3,000 users, do you want to go and maybe you have a process that says create users and they say create one user, you can do it once. Create 5 users, you can probably do it. When they say create 20 users, create 50 users, haba now. You, of course, you don't want to do it one by one. So you are forced to know how to use PowerShell and command lines to do these automation processes, right? So in Identity Common, we want to learn how to use command lines, and PowerShell. So the good thing about this thing is, for me, what I've done over the years is once I'm able to get a PowerShell script that works for me, I just keep it in my repository. And so that subsequently I can fine tune it and all of that. But using scripts from scratch, it's never my forte. So I rely heavily on colleagues who know how to do this. And that's why you see networking and this kind of community that we have is very good, because you might not have strength or skill in certain things, but you can leverage on communities like this so that you can get people who can help you out. So it's very important that we automate things. If not, if you don't think about how to automate, you're going to have a very slow process or porous process. Another identity concept is, now this is to Microsoft, the likes of Microsoft Graph, that enables you to export data from one point and push it into a repository. You don't have to kill yourself at this level for this, but as you grow your career, it depends on where you want to. So for instance, for people who need to push data from the Microsoft Azure into things like their Sentinel or their own on-prem or whatever SIEM solution that they have, they rely heavily on the Microsoft Graph REST APIs. Central identity system. So when you hear central identity system, right, or central identity management system, this is just a single tool where credentials are stored and managed that will provide authentication and authorization capabilities. So when credentials are stored here, you can verify where they are stored, right? If you don't have a central place where you store credentials, how do you verify those credentials, right? And how do you manage them? And how do you grant access to those credentials? So in an identity security, it's very important for us to know where is the central point. Where are we storing this identity? So it's the same thing for those who do applications, for those who develop applications. We have Madam Franca here who is in the Power BI. They will tell you when they are trying to maybe create their data sets, put their data, they will ask for an identity because they need to be able to connect to that data source. And they need certain levels of access on their account to be able to go into that data source and pull the amount of data that they need. And if data is scattered everywhere, the Power BI guys will tell you that the first thing they do is see how to consolidate data, to put it in a central system. And if they cannot have, if they need to pull data from ABC, in that ABC, they need to know which identity do I need when I go to A, when I go to B, and when I go to C. Most times you will see best practice, they will always tell you how to extract data into a central data source so that they can pull from there. Madam Franca, if I'm right, just correct me. If I'm wrong or right, comment in the chat. But it's very important to have a central system because you want to control the identity, you want to manage it. And that's where the Microsoft Azure AD comes in for us. Now we have what we call the decentralized identity. Decentralized identity. What does this mean? Your identity is not tied to just one place. So many of you today, you have identity for your school, you have identity for your work, you have identity for your Amazon, you have identity for your health insurance, you have identity for your banking system, you have identity for your shopping platforms. Your identity is decentralized. Most times you're the one who generates it, you own it. So for instance, your Amazon credentials is not managed by your office, but through your Amazon credentials, you can be compromised. So for instance, if you shop with Amazon and then they send you a phishing campaign to your email, and then you click on it and you click on it on your company system, you have compromised your system. So we're looking at also decentralized identity. And the decentralized identity flow starts with, this is a high level, with a user who needs to do an authentication to people and apps. Whatever your decentralized identifier is, that identifier authenticates you, and then you go to whatever the identity hub is, and then you go to whatever the decentralized systems are. Most times you see decentralized identity used for things like blockchain. We'll be looking more into this in subsequent class. Another thing we'll be looking at also is verified ID. Verified ID. Microsoft gave us also a 90-day trial on this that will also be enabling in the class, so that we can look at how to do things around verified ID. How do you verify an ID and align it with a decentralized identity? Before we go off today, I need us to, do we all have a Microsoft tenant that we can use to do our practicals and demo? If you don't, let me share the screen. Don't. If you don't, can you go to this site just on your browser, type Microsoft 365 Developer Program, and then when you join the developer program, you should be able to create a free, sorry, let me see. I have so many Microsoft accounts. Because we need to do some assignments. So I'll be dropping assignments that we will do. The first one is we're all going to just create our developer account so that we have a tenant, and so that we can have the Azure Active Directory with conditional access policy and all of that that we'll use to practice. Please, can you confirm in the chat if you already have an Office 365 tenant that enables you have conditional access policy and all these other features that will allow us to practice? So you can see I just set it up now, at one hand. You use your email. And the reason why we want this is it allows us to be able to get all of these features that can allow us to do the kind of practice that we want. Okay. So I'm going to do this. So once you've logged in, you can see me, I integrated it with my Gmail, and then you log in, you set up the E5. Okay. I have to join. Is someone else trying it? Are you getting the same error? Let me be sure if the error is not isolated to me. Is any other person having the same error I'm getting? I want to know if the error is isolated to me, or if it's the platform having error, so that I can skip this and come back.
Hello, Joy.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine takes me to when I do developer.microsoft.com,
Mm-hmm.
it just takes me to it takes me to a screen that says any platform, your languages, your tools. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't do you want me to share my screen briefly?
I will appreciate, please do. Thank you. Let me
Oh,
stop sharing.
okay.
I'm sorry, Ma. Please, before she shares, can I quickly say what I'm seeing on my own screen? I'm seeing join
Okay.
the Microsoft 365
Yeah, so you click on join.
developer.
Yeah, so you
Join
click
now.
on
Okay,
join.
that's fine.
Okay, can you see my screen now?
Okay.
Yes.
This is where it takes me to.
No, no, so it is okay, that's it now.
I'm supposed to do developer.microsoft.com, yeah?
Yeah, I just went to developer program and then I saw join now. Can
Okay,
you
I should
change
do.
it to, yeah, let's do developer program. No, just remove the whole address. Just type Microsoft developer program without the HTTPS. And
Okay.
I want to be sure if that error is just me or if the portal is having Microsoft
Oh,
developer program.
one word.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Developer.
Yeah, so that's the first one. Yeah.
.com?
No, enter. No, no need for .com. Yeah, yeah, the first one.
Okay. Okay, so
Click on
join
join
there.
now. Let's
Yeah.
see. So use another account. Okay. Are you okay
I
with
should
using?
use.
Are you okay
Yeah,
with using your
yeah.
corporate account?
Yes, that's where yeah, that's fine. Go to this account. Okay, they're not okay. It
Yeah.
says they're not able to sign. Okay. Okay,
So
so
I think you need to sign out. Yeah, and I think they know when you're using a, a corporate account
corporate
to.
account. Okay,
Yeah,
since the free one, yeah.
exactly. The whole idea is
Yeah.
that you want to practice, so they don't want you to
Yes.
use they
Use
don't
the
want you to use
company one.
yeah. So they feel like if you use a company one, you're going to get everything
Oh,
free and you might never buy it.
okay. Okay. It took me back here again.
Mm. Miriam, how far did you make any progress?
Sorry, Ma. I'm trying to use my Gmail. I don't know, but it's not going through.
You should.
Let me find out
When you
account
use your
type.
Gmail, say create account. Have you ever created a Microsoft account with your Gmail?
Um, no. Then I should no account that I should create one.
Exactly. So say create account, then that create account still use your Gmail. Doesn't necessarily mean create a new account. It's just
Okay.
trying to say that your Gmail account has not been used as a Microsoft account.
Okay, Ma. Although you say my mail has been used by another Microsoft account.
Oh, that means you've used it now. It should allow you, or you can't remember the password.
I do.
Okay, so exactly. So this is how we should
So
come. So I need to check why mine is exactly. So if you can see Franca's page, this is exactly how it should be. So you can see it's going to expire in June. Even though we can renew, it's going to give you 25 user license. So if you scroll down, so I'll check why mine is having issues, right? And that's it. Scroll down, scroll down. Yeah. Okay, so scroll up. You can scroll back up. So yours went. This is how it's supposed to be, and yeah, 25 user line. So you can now go to subscription. Down the place that says go to subscription.
okay.
Yeah. So if you are not familiar with how to use Microsoft Azure AD, don't worry. That's we'll try as much as possible every time when we take the class to give 20-30 minutes to do everything we're doing now, so that you can get familiar with it. Madam Franca is familiar. That's why I'm not telling her click, click, click.
Okay, let me stop sharing. Okay, actually, I had to use a different browser because I was already set up for Microsoft on the other browser.
Okay, so maybe that's what I need to do. I
Yes.
need to
Yeah, you use a different
browser.
browser. Yes.
Okay, all right. So that's it. Once you do that and go to subscription, it would give us our. I would have loved to. Let me see if I can fix mine just to show us. It will give us our users, right? Because I want us to. If we can just take some time to do that, while I also see if I can fix my. Want us to see how it will be so that when we go away, we can. Let me try. Microsoft. Let me see. This one will give me. Please, if you're watching from YouTube, what are we trying to do? We're trying to set up our demo account so that we can do our assignments. So you go to your browser, you go to the developer program. Let me share my screen. I want to use a totally different account now. Let me see if it would. I hope that will work. Go to developer.microsoft.com, you create a profile. I'm trying to create a new profile. Let me see if that will work. We're trying to create a demo environment that we can use.
Okay, I think I'm signed in now. Is this where, should I share my screen again?
Okay, just give me a few minutes. Let me take people through this.
Oh, okay.
Just with this, we want this. This. We want this. Okay, so you land here, you set up. Oh, something is wrong. It's not just Maybe I need to restart my system. It's not, for me, it's not just creating the subscription. It's not creating the subscription for me. Okay, Madam Franca, please, can you share? Let me use your screen just to explain. Good. So once you went to subscription, this is where you will see your Office 365 dashboard, right? So please click on admin by the left, down, admin, yeah, come up a bit, is yes. So your admin center is your, which of the accounts did you use? Yes, that one, yeah. The good thing with the developer program demo platform is that Microsoft has given us all their full licenses. So we can practice what is like in real life scenario. What we can do is, if there's anybody who is unable to set this up, when we come next during the week, just chat in the Discord channel. And what we can do is, for those who have set up, they can, because they have 25 users, they can create one of their users for you, and you also still have access to that demo platform, right? It's yeah, so it's limited to the first 90 days, and we can extend it. Within 90 days, our class should be over, and so that should be enough, but you can extend it in the event where you want to continue to use it. So you can see here, so this is the Office 365 tenants, and then we go to the Azure. Please, if you go to show all by the left down, show all, click on Azure, scroll down, and you see the Azure AD, which is our identity provider here. So for those of you who haven't seen what an Azure Active Directory looks like, so this is it. So this is our identity provider, the Microsoft Azure Active Directory. This is what it looks like, you know. And so we're going to be seeing, if you go to users, you will see the list of users that they've created for us. If you go to device, you see groups. So let's use, you know, this week to set this up. And in the Discord channel, I'm going to be dropping some things that we can do to get our hands practical around the Azure Active Directory. When we come next week, we'll pick up from decentralized identity and flow. Remember, what we have looked at this today is, first of all, to even understand what identity is, understand the identity concept. We've also looked at the zero trust methodology and what that means to Microsoft and why it's important. We've looked at three key principles when it comes to identity and zero trust methodology, which is zero, verify explicitly, remind me the other one, assume bridge, and then who can remind me the third one? And use least privilege.
Yeah. Okay. Exactly. Yeah, I was going to say use least privilege. Yeah.
Exactly. Access. So we're going to, I'm going to give us a mock company. I'll send, one of the tasks will be, we'll have a mock company, and in that mock company, you would, based on your 25 users, you know, classify who is HR, who is this, and then create certain privileges, and so that you can now understand what it means by, you know, creating this privilege, verify explicitly. Yes, Miriam, I will share the curriculum. Forgive me, I've been very ill. I'm still struggling with my health here, but
yeah, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm very Igbo. I told our founders that they had asked me to cancel the class, and I said, no matter how it is, you know, we're a community. Let me try as much as I can do, just to help.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So
by stripes you're healed in Jesus'
Amen.
name.
Amen. So yeah, But trust me, this is an interesting learning part, because it begins to make sense to you, certain things that if, for those of you who are already working, you begin to understand, okay, is this what my colleagues are doing? For those of you who are already in security, but probably you're not in identity, it begins to help you understand what needs to be done. Someone like Madam Franca, who is in Power BI but curious about this, security, she begins to now appreciate when, she asks for certain level of access and somebody doesn't just give her full access and say, what do you need it for? Why do you need this? Who do you want to talk to? What connection do you want? He needs to make her say, oh, this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to give me least privilege, and only allow what I need and when I need it. And the good thing about it is when she now knows it, she can even be the one to say, this is the access I need. This is where I need you to create the identity for me and XYZ. Please try and set up your tenant. If you can't set up your tenant, like I said, let's know in the channel so that we can meet people like Franca, and then maybe she can create one of her accounts to be another admin, and we can leverage on this. I would also try to sort out my own, because that's what I intended. I intended that if mine works, even if other people cannot get theirs, I would elevate some of the users' accounts to be admin, and people can leverage on my tenant. But the reason why we wanted everybody to have their tenant is so that you can learn at your pace, because we all know that all of us don't learn at the same pace, just so that you can feel free. Yes, so that you can feel free to, if you wanted to create a conditional access policy, to do that. Even if you made a mistake, it will not impact on another person's own. That's why I would love for everybody to see how to fix the issue. So if you are still not able to, please, I'm very much available in the chat in Discord. I can drop my WhatsApp number if that's a faster approach for you, in the Discord channel, so that you can have this set up. Please, I'll be dropping assignments in the channel during the week for us to just try as much as possible. Nothing too serious, nothing. I know that we're all working, we're all trying to, do motherhood, family, and this, but just things to get us familiar with the Microsoft identity. So we're living today, and one thing we know is that we now know what an identity provider is. We're also living today knowing how important zero trust principle is when it comes to identity security. And so we know that we verify explicitly, we assume breach, and we use privileged access. Okay. We also know that we must give an identity, why we must give an identity, so that we can know who this person is, authorize them, grant them access only where they need to go to, right? And allow ease of administration. So when we come next week, we're going to go deep dive more into decentralized identity and conditional access policy. Thank you very much for your time, for all those who came in early. And do we have any other questions?
Hello. Can you hear me
Yes.
now?
Yes, Titi, finally.
I'm trying to stop to my phone. I had to give some permission. What was going on and off. Thank you so much, Ma. God Almighty will perfect your health. We really appreciate this class. Despite that I couldn't participate fully because of the my state of network. I really appreciate you. I really enjoy a bit I'm able to get from this. I've started on self-learning. I started the course on my own, and
Good.
then I was able to create an account.
Okay.
That very account. It was even on Microsoft 365. I started with. As I finished fundamental and I started Microsoft 365. That's when the account creation on a developer came in. So I was following the instruction. I was able to create, but I couldn't go on. So when I was just waiting for the class to start, so that I started with AWS security cloud before I just started this. So I don't really know much about Microsoft security. I work as a CCTV and access control installer. From physical security, I'm transiting to cyber security. So I'm getting I know. Please, after this class, can I be able to get full recordings, Ma, as soon as possible?
Yes, so we're going to upload everything on the YouTube channel. And one thing you must know about Techstylers is that it's not just because of the training. That's why we are called mentors and facilitators. You utilize us till our blood is finished. Yes, we have committed ourselves to serve the community. So please, please, please don't say, oh, we had our class on Saturday. That's why you have us. If there are questions, ask during the week. For someone like you who has a background around CCTV and all of that, trust me, doing identity is going to be very interesting. And I'll give you a typical example. The ideal CCTV installer will come to a house or a company and set up CCTV, set up generic accounts, hand it over to the company and go away. That's what you normally would do. With
Yeah.
your knowledge today in identity, you will now understand why it's important to, in your requirement gathering, begin to ask, who are the people in security department? Who are the people in audit? Who are the people who are going to in identity team? And now you will create different access. You will not give blanket access. I've gone to do audits in organizations and seen the security man at the security post. When he logs in, he can see everything. So when he can wipe away footages, when it's time for investigation, you begin to see that people have wiped away footages, and you need to see that everybody in the security department, all of them were using admin. So who is really the admin? So what identity is teaching us is now you want to know that, oh, there are 5 staffs in the security control room. The 5 of them need their own identity. And the 5 staffs in the security control room, who should have access to delete footage, or who should have access to replay footage, or who should have access to view footage. So when you begin to add this to your existing role as a CCTV operator, it makes you stand out from your counterparts. When people engage you, they will know that Titi doesn't just set up CCTV, she understands the access control, because if a footage is tampered with, it can cause XYZ issues. So now you set up your infrastructure with more detailed information and knowledge as an identity security provider.
Wow. Thank you so much, Ma. Thank you.
All right.
Hello. Okay, I have a
yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Okay, for this track, what exam can one take after this? Because actually,
Yes.
for me, okay, I'm supposed to have taken the AZ 900.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I'm still looking for a free voucher. Yeah, I've studied it, and yeah,
Okay,
and
the AZ, you are
okay, I'm
lucky.
taking
AZ
at the
900,
moment.
AZ 900 has free voucher from
Azure.
Microsoft, so you are lucky. Yes.
Okay, but I haven't seen it. I've been looking at. Actually, I took the 2 days training, but they still have not sent me a voucher. I haven't gotten a voucher for that for a long time. Yeah, and okay, but now I'm taking the AZ 500. Yeah. So what exam can one take?
Okay, for this one we are doing
this?
is the SC 300, because we're very focused on identity.
Okay, SC 300.
Yes, but it's very important, you know, if you want to know Azure very well, to start with the AZ 900. But like I said, it's okay. In my delivery of the training, I'm going to try as much as possible to make sure that I pass understanding and not just, you know, assume that everybody here knows what Azure is. And that's why I try to break it down. But, you know, for value outside the learning, we would recommend that you do AZ 900 and then you do the SC 300, which is this one. For the AZ 900, once you do the virtual trainings, you should have the 2-day voucher. Madam Franca, I will chat you after the call to just explain why you might be having that issue and what you can do to bypass that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, so the AZ 900, so I will recommend for everybody here, I will also drop it in the Discord channel, the link to Microsoft virtual training for AZ 900 that gives you free exam voucher so that you can write the exam and get that. And for the SC 300, we don't have free exam voucher, but I know that Textilers has partnership with Microsoft, and so they are working on seeing how many vouchers we can get. If we can get free, fine. If we can't, can we get them at discounted rates? So I get that. But the exam for this training is SC 300. And guess what? I haven't written it, so we can all prepare together and write it together.
Oh, really? Wow, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Okay,
that's for you to know that we're all learning together, so we can all, you know, prepare and write it together.
All right.
But for now, we're not going to focus on the exam. We're going to focus on learning and understanding. And then when we're done with the class, we will all now agree on when we want to write the exam, and then we'll continue our learning. That's why it's a continuous thing. We'll now take our learning to preparing for the exam, and then we'll do our joint study again for the exam, and we'll all come out with flying colors.
Thank you, Ma. Wow.
The goal of Techstylers is
That's
to see how to help you enhance where you are and take you to the next step. You know, so like you, Madam Titi, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You're in CCTV installation. You're going to learn how to use other things to amplify that role, and that stands you out in your job. So you don't necessarily have to junk your CCTV security lifestyle that you started and say, oh, because I want to do Microsoft. You can merge the two, and from there, that will be your entry point to break into the security career path.
Yes, sorry for cutting you. You know, I'm thinking of ditching it completely because I'm just tired of the going to sites. Honestly, so to say, I've spent 10 years of my life working in that line. So I'm just trying.
So I'm going to have you. So it's okay to not want to go to site again, right? Yes, because as you advance, but begin to look at yourself, like I said, as a security consultant. And so when people want to do CCTV, you have a full understanding of the role of CCTV, how to implement it, and the access controls and privileges they need to give. When you begin to speak to organizations like this now, you will see that your value and your interest increases and your rates, because now you're not just talking, come and put camera. You're beginning to ask them who has access to this. If you have an incident, who needs to look at the footages? Where are we storing it? The place we're storing it, who has access to the storage system? What are the privileges? Can the solution you're using to set up CCTV, can you integrate it to an identity provider? If yes, how do you do the integration?
Wow. Thank you, Ma. Thank you.
All right, guys, have a wonderful weekend and watch out for my chats.
Yes, Ma.
Where would you drop the chat?
I
On
will
WhatsApp?
I can drop it in the Teams chat now, if that's okay with everybody.